There is a room. Inside the room, 8 people seated around a table. At the front of the room, 2 cards. The first card has 1 line on it. The second card has 3 lines, labeled A, B, and C. The question is simple. Which line on the second card matches the line on the first card? The answer is obvious. Any person with functioning eyes can see it immediately. 7 of the 8 people in the room give the wrong answer. The 8th person, the only real subject in the experiment, watches this happen. 75% of the time, they give the wrong answer too. Solomon Asch was a social psychologist at Swarthmore College in 1951. He was interested in a question that nobody had tested cleanly before. Not can people be manipulated, but can people be made to deny the direct evidence of their own senses? Not through threat, not through pressure, not through anything except the quiet, unanimous disagreement of the people around them. He designed an experiment so simple it looked like it couldn't possibly work. He recruited groups of 8 participants. 7 of those 8 were confederates, actors, trained by Asch, who knew the real purpose of the study. Only one person in the room was a genuine subject. That person did not know they were the only genuine subject. They believed they were participating in a vision test alongside 7 strangers. The task was straightforward. Asch would hold up a card with a single reference line. Then he would hold up a second card with 3 comparison lines, A, B, and C. One of the 3 lines clearly and obviously matched the reference line. The others were clearly and obviously different, in some cases by several inches. There was no ambiguity. The correct answer was visible to anyone in the room. Each person at the table would state their answer aloud in order. The genuine subject was always seated second to last, so they heard 7 other answers before giving their own. For the first 2 rounds, the confederates gave the correct answer. The genuine subject relaxed. This was easy, everyone agreed. Then on the 3rd round, all 7 confederates gave the same wrong answer. Calmly, confidently, without hesitation. The genuine subject heard 7 people state, clearly and audibly, that line A matched the reference line. Line A did not match the reference line. Line C did, by several inches. The subject could see this. And then it was their turn to answer. Asch watched what happened next across hundreds of trials. Some subjects held firm immediately, looked at the card, stated the correct answer, moved on. But a significant portion did something else. They paused, they looked again at the card, they looked at the other people, they looked back at the card. And then they said the wrong answer out loud, in a clear and steady voice as if they believed it. Asch spent years trying to understand the mechanism. What he found split into 2 distinct forces operating simultaneously. The first force he called normative influence. This is the pressure to conform in order to be accepted, the social cost of disagreement. The fear is not that you are wrong. The fear is that you will be seen as wrong, as difficult, as disruptive, as the person who always has to be different. Normative influence does not require you to believe the group. It only requires you to value belonging more than accuracy. The second force was more disturbing. Asch called it informational influence. This is what happens when you begin to genuinely doubt your own perception, because everyone else disagrees with it. Not performance, not social calculation. Actual doubt. The subject looks at the card again, not because they think they were wrong, but because 7 people have now made them wonder if they were wrong. And in that moment of wondering, the brain does something it was designed to do. It updates. The brain's default assumption is that when everyone else perceives something differently, the most likely explanation is a fault in your own perception, not a fault in theirs. This assumption is usually correct. In a world where social consensus tracks reality most of the time, trusting the group over your individual reading is a survival advantage. Asch had engineered the one condition where that advantage becomes a liability. A unanimous group, a clear observable fact, a single dissenting perceiver. The brain, running its normal error correction software, concluded that the dissenting perceiver, the subject themselves, was the one making the error. They were not performing conformity. They were experiencing it. They had been made to doubt what their own eyes were showing them by people who were paid to disagree. After the experiment, when subjects were told the truth, many described the experience with the same word. I learned. Not embarrassed, not foolish. Alone, the doubt was the experiment. Asch ran 18 variations to map the conditions precisely. The first variation, he tested subjects individually with no group present. Error rate less than 1%. The line was obvious. Without the group, almost nobody got it wrong. The second variation, he reduced the group from 7 confederates to 3. Conformity dropped slightly, but remained substantial. The third variation, he reduced the group to 1 single confederate giving the wrong answer. Conformity almost disappeared. Unanimity was the critical variable, not size. 1 person disagreeing with you feels like an outlier. 7 people disagreeing with you feels like reality. The fourth variation, the most important, he gave the genuine subject 1 ally. 1 confederate, instructed to give the correct answer. Conformity dropped from 75% to 5%. 1 ally. Not a majority, not a convincing argument. 1 single person who saw what you saw. That was enough to hold the subject's perception in place. The ally did not need to persuade anyone. Asch hadn't studied weak people. He had studied the conditions that make strong people weak. Here is where this stops being a 1951 experiment. The boardroom where everyone agrees with the strategy that you can see is wrong. The diagnosis the medical team has agreed on, while you notice the symptom that doesn't fit. The performance review where your manager's framing bears no relation to what you actually did. The group chat where a narrative forms and anyone who questions it gets ignored. The meeting where everyone laughs at the joke and you watch yourself laugh too. The social media thread where a consensus emerges and your counter-evidence gets 2 likes. The family dinner where a version of events is agreed upon that you remember differently. None of these require a psychologist. None of these require actors or a laboratory. All of them are Asch, running in every room you walk into, on every platform you open, in every group you belong to. The question is not whether the mechanism is operating. The question is whether you can feel it when it starts. Right now. Today. Asch's research gives you 5 conditions that make conformity most likely. Knowing them is not protection, but it is the beginning of protection. The first condition, unanimity. When everyone in the room agrees, your brain treats this as evidence about reality, not about the room. The counter-move, ask who is not in the room. The second condition, public commitment. Conformity increases sharply when you have to state your answer out loud, in front of the group, before you have time to think. The counter-move, delay your public position, think privately first. The pressure to perform agreement is highest in the first 30 seconds. The third condition, status differential. The higher the perceived status of the people disagreeing with you, the stronger the informational pull. The counter-move, separate the question from who is asking it. What does the evidence show, independent of who is in the room? The fourth condition, isolation. Conformity is highest when you believe you are the only one who sees it differently. The counter-move, find your 1 ally before the meeting, before the decision, before the group has formed its position. You do not need a majority. Asch proved you only need 1. The fifth condition, repeated exposure. The longer you sit inside a consensus, the more the brain normalizes it as reality. The counter-move, write down what you believed before the group formed its view. Then compare it to what you believe after. The distance between those 2 things is the experiment running on you. The framework is not, trust yourself over the group. The framework is, know which part of you is seeing and which part of you is performing. They are not the same part. Here is the final thing. The thing that Asch found in his debrief interviews that most summaries leave out. When subjects were told the truth, that the others were actors, that the wrong answers were deliberate, most of them did not feel relief. They felt shame, not at having been deceived, at having doubted themselves. At the moment they looked at a line that was clearly the correct answer, and allowed 7 strangers to make them wonder. The shame was pointed inward, at their own perception, their own judgment, their own willingness to let the room override what they could see. Asch found this the most significant result of the entire study, not the conformity rate. The self-directed shame of the people who had conformed, because it meant that on some level, even in the moment of conforming, they knew. They saw the correct line. They said the wrong one. And they knew the difference. The experiment did not reveal people who could not see. It revealed people who could see and spoke anyway. The question Asch never answered, the one he left open at the end of his career, is why knowing is so rarely enough. You are in a room right now. You can see the line. You are not alone.